Welcome everyone to Mail Fuzz TV. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Star Trek Deep Space Nine, Season 1, Episode 4. It's called Babel. So full spoilers for the episode as always. The premise of this one is that whilst O'Brien is fixing things around the ship, and that's kind of the whole opening of the episode, we'll talk about that in a bit, he accidentally triggers a booby trap that's been there for a long time. It is basically a virus that makes people, it gives them the inability to speak properly, where they start just communicating in just random words that don't make any sense. Even if they try and write things down, it comes out all
the way they would describe it sounded like they struggled to comprehend, everyone else as well.
Yeah, although I was all unclear if they were understanding themselves. It seemed like to me that they were. Like when O'Brien was saying things and he was frustrated that no one could understand him, I still got the impression that he to himself was having coherent thoughts.
Well, you could take it both ways. You could take it as he was getting frustrated that no one was understanding him, or he was unable to understand why it was coming out like that. He was hearing that it was coming out wrong and he couldn't understand why, and that would be frustrating as well. Oh sure, yeah, but I think we both agree that he definitely understands what he's thinking himself. Yes. Yeah, and we're picking O'Brien because O'Brien's first, and then it spreads from there. I will say there's definitely a couple things in this that, having lived through the last few years, where it was a little bit triggering. There's a scene where Odo, after they've initiated like a lockdown, a quarantine, because oh shit, we can't let this leave the ship, everyone should stay in their quarters so it doesn't spread. Odo comes across Quarks and he's like, Quark, what the hell? Business is booming here. And that actually is already kind of notable because it was dead at the start of the episode, because all the replicators were broken. And he's like, well, come on, let them come here. This quarantine's get everyone feeling, nervous. They should come here, blow off some steam. And all I'm thinking is like, you're going to spread this to the entire ship. And would you believe it? He is the reason why every single person on the ship that shouldn't have gotten this ended up with it. Yep, pretty much. And then you got the other ship there like, just let us leave. We'll be fine. We're not infected. You don't know that. There's an incubation period here, buddy. Like, you might already be balls deep in this. You don't know. So, yes, having lived through, 2020 to 2022, and ongoing, yes, we're not quite done yet. A couple of the things in this were it was the same when I reviewed the first Alien on the Atomic Cinema Experiment, or sci-fi movie podcast over on Mail Fuzz Movies. We did that in 2020, and it was like early on, and it was like April. It was Alien Day 2020, so it was April. So we were only like a month out of the pandemic, and there's a scene at the start of that movie where they want to come back on board the ship after Kane's been face hugged, and like Ripley's saying, "No, we can't let you on. This could get some sort of virus or something. Some contaminant could get on the ship that we are not prepared for. It doesn't matter how cruel this sounds. We can't let you back on board with him. We just can't." And then like Ash and obviously later on in the film you find out he's got some ulterior like motives / like reasons for doing so, but he just opens the door and Ripley's pissed. And for the first time ever watching that movie, I was so on Ripley's side. So on Ripley's side. So yeah. Anyway, slight tangent because of made me think of the pandemic. But yeah, what did you think of Babel? I think it's probably the weakest episode so far, for me at least. But it's still like pretty fun. I think there's a little bit of a disappointment in that more of the main cast don't get it, and I feel like there's for an episode that revolves around everyone speaking gibberish, there's not enough everyone speaking gibberish and trying to understand each other. Because like probably 3/4 or more of the main crew are kind of just fine. For a lot of the episode, everyone eventually gets it, but it's quite late on. I think that maybe comes from an expectations thing. I think when you heard the premise of this, you're thinking, oh, they're going to have to try and communicate even though they can't, right? Like, how are they going to do it without words and things like that? But because in the episode, they're only like that for a while, and then they eventually get a fever and just get sick, and then ultimately might die, it means that it's less about trying to solve the
the hurdle of how can we communicate, and it's more just about trying to find a cure conventional
It is,
ways.
but I think because the virus is so unique in what it's doing compared to just, all right, it makes you ill and then you die. Because you could play this episode pretty much exactly the same in terms of the actual plot of, all right, we need to find a cure, we need to investigate where it's come from. You can do all of that with just, it makes you ill and then you die. I think the unique selling point is, no, it makes you unable to communicate properly. I don't think it capitalizes on that very well.
It makes me wonder how the story started then. Like, did it start off with the idea of the communication, or was it just, no, we've got this idea for a virus episode, oh, we'll give it something quirky that's sci-fi, and that's what they came up with?
Probably.
So it wasn't written around the idea, oh, it's about communication barriers.
That is likely the result. I just think that's overall the most unique part is the quirky, aspect of the virus. I think it could have done more with that.
I think with the episodes so far, and I suspect a lot of this first season, the more interesting elements of the episode are the little character kind of establishing moments, or the little relationship things. Once again, Odo and Quark have a lot of interaction this episode, and almost every scene they're together is actually quite good. Very, very entertaining stuff. Early on, Quark's lamenting, kind of sarcastically, as much as he can be sarcastic about how business isn't going very well at Quark's. And, he's like, oh, you would love to see me go out of business, wouldn't you? He's like, oh, that'd be a crying shame, kind of thing. And then they interact again. Quark, obviously, he's been using the replicators he's not supposed to make his beverages and his food. And that's how it spreads around. Because it's all the replicators in the command sections of the station that O'Brien's fixed first that are doing this.
His priorities.
Yeah. And, there's a couple of moments from both of them. One together, one that's just Odo, that I think both really just gave me a great sense of the personality again. And just as we're establishing who they are in this first season. One is when Odo's with Sisko and I think maybe Kira. And they're talking about, okay, where did this thing come from? And at first she thinks it's Cardassian because of the power source, but it becomes clear, not too quick, long into the episode, that it's actually Bajoran, this device. And the theory is that this was something that was snuck out of the station as a kind of a sabotage attempt back when it was first being built, and for whatever reason it never got triggered until now. And there's just a little moment with Odo where he says, yes, this was right at the start of the station before I came on as head of security. Might I
Yeah.
just a little
He wants
thing.
it very clear. He was not anything to do with this. He didn't miss this. He didn't overlook something terrible.
He didn't fail. And then the other one, of course, is that eventually, Kira goes off to try and get the doctor dude who might be able to fix things. Sisko comes down with the illness. Everyone else, and there's a little bit before that as well with just Sisko and Kira, and they're the only ones on the command deck. Everyone else is sick. Everyone else is gone. And it's left to Odo, and we could theorize that Odo might be immune to this, and that's why he never gets it, because of his...
Maybe, or maybe it just would have taken a little bit more time, and he would have been next. We'll never know.
But let's be honest, he has a very, very, very different physical state than everyone else.
Yeah. It's very reasonable to assume that maybe he is immune. Even though obviously we've got humans and Bajorans and even Cardassians, and then you can extend that to Vulcans, Klingons, you could make an argument that all of these species are maybe not technically humanoids.
Yeah, I was going to say mammals per se, but they all work similarly enough that
carbon-based life forms.
Yeah, carbon-based life forms. Whereas Odo is like just something like he's a completely different
pile of goop.
Yeah, it's like comparing us to I don't know, even is it even like fish? Like there's some similarities.
I suspect we're closer to fish.
Yes.
Than we would be to Odo.
But that's because we're from the same planet.
I suspect Bajorans are closer to fish.
Yeah, that's fair. At some level we're much closer. So, but anyway, so he's on his own, and he puts there's a call put out. Sisko, just before he starts losing it, puts out a call saying anyone on the station that can still understand what I'm saying and can communicate, come to the command deck and volunteer. We need you, kind of thing. We just need people to try and man some buttons whilst things are going down. So I like that feeling that the episode was giving me. And Odo's on his own, and who walks in to help but Quark? And Quark comes in, And the exchange here that I loved is like, oh, you're the last person I expected to volunteer. Volunteer? Oh, no, we can discuss my price later. I really like that.
Yeah. I like this as well with Quark trying to communicate with his customers. Where, they're walking like, of course you got it. And he's like, I didn't get it. I'm just trying to, see if I can get through to them.
Yeah, he thinks it's a language you can crack by just shifting some words around. Maybe he can.
He's determined to like it's pig Latin or something. Like he can crack the code.
Yeah, because once again, there's a scene where Odo goes to Quark before this and says, "Hey, there's like no security right now because everyone's sick. But I'm letting you know that if anything goes missing in the promenade, I'm holding you responsible." So he's, he goes to warn him, thinking he's up to no good, thinking that he'll be a source of trouble, and yet it's him that comes and actually helps him out and saves the day. It's him that gives him a hand and helps. And it's an interesting little thing where you're like, okay, he keeps saying he wants paid, but deep down is that just kind of like, oh, he's playing his character, but he actually in some way does care a little bit about him.
Oh, I'm sure he does, and I'm sure that will be kind of a big thing later in the show. Kind of getting that where it comes out a little bit more naturally, as opposed to through this veneer. It's kind of fun though. We're like 4 episodes in, and like Quark is single-handedly, making Ferengi not just. It was getting to a point where I kind of groaned and was like, Ferengi episode on Next Gen, and now I'm like, no, maybe it's not all Ferengi that are just terrible and boring.
There's a very easy parallel here. This is the Klingons again, because the Klingons in the original series were just the same every time they showed up. But then you go to Next Gen, and all of a sudden you have a Klingon main character who still is very Klingon. He still believes in honor and combat and all that stuff, but it's a bit more layered. You get time to develop him. You get time to do stuff with Worf. And it's the same here. The Ferengi on Next Gen just always showed up in these little pockets, and they were always just a stereotype of themselves, and that's it. Yep. And now here we actually get one that might actually grow and advance, and he's still clearly Ferengi, not just visually. He still has the core like
business acumen.
Yes, there you go. So nice way of putting it. I was going to put greed and corporate.
Yeah, you could have said it that way.
Something or other. But yeah. Yes. So, yeah. And for the record, Ferengi, like, I remember what led to it. It was the typical people try to argue, Star Trek's too political now, and people were showing examples from like this show and older shows as to why that's bullshit. But one of the examples that came up was like Ferengi's like a critique of capitalism. Like, Star Trek's all about getting past the need for capitalism, and the Ferengi are this kind of joke about this is what we used to be. This is why it's good we've moved on. So I'm just.
Are you telling me modern viewers don't understand subtext?
Well,
and I'm using subtext very loosely here because some of it's barely subtext, but.
Well, I would say it's not so much because some of these people I think are quite old. I think it's not so much that it's modern viewers don't understand subtext. I would say that there's a portion of viewers that have never understood subtext and are now suddenly surprised why everyone's telling them there was subtext the whole time.
It's quite possible, yeah.
And again, some of it is very borderline.
Yeah, so subtext is maybe putting it a bit strongly for some of the things that they willfully ignore.
Yeah, so. Yeah, the Star Trek spoilers classic. Star Trek and X-Men, it's the two I always go back to if people not getting like the whole point of them from the start. But anyway, and they're both in the 60s.
My favorite is the recent things of people going, wait, Star Trek was based on Nazi Germany? Not Star Wars was based on Nazi Germany.
Star Trek? What are we talking about?
Because you just said, Star Wars had like Nazi Germany iconography, and they're like, what? And we're like, did you miss the word stormtrooper? It's like, how much more obvious do you want things to be?
There's a lot of Vietnam and
there is. It's basically, Nazi ideology in a Vietnam kind of setting, essentially.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it can be more than one thing, but I'm just, I always thought of the Vietnam stuff first before I thought.
Well, that's because it's the kind of the
time period more than anything, probably.
The time period was obviously fresher then, and it's more just about the guerrilla warfare stuff that kind of plays into that.
Yeah. Anyway,
people are awful at consuming media. It turns out.
Yes. Many people are. yeah, so I enjoyed the interactions. I enjoyed when he's like, "Oh, I served on a Ferengi ship for 8 years. I observed this many times. Observed, energizing." Principal Snyder still got that comic timing, which I really appreciate. I would say that else.
You didn't, but there was no need. It's uncalled for.
Hey, he should be teaching the kids with Keiko. Get him in the classroom. He's got experience. He was a principal.
He was never a principal. Didn't happen.
And I know this came before he was on Buffy, but if we're arguing they're in the same like continuity, then Buffy obviously happened first because this is set in the future.
At what possible point were we arguing that they're in the same continuity?
Well,
you just decided this.
Well, no, there's actually a hint. That's okay.
No.
If I remember correctly, there's an Easter egg in Angel at one point that William Jutani, which I know is not Star Trek, still, but is one of the clients of Wolfram and Hart, right?
I remember that, yeah.
And the reason why I'm bringing this up is because that gets in the ball game, and
right, so we're connected to the Alien verse.
The Alien verse, yes. And there's numerous.
It's kind of sad that it is probably an Alien verse at this point, isn't it?
Yeah, this all comes from so Saint Elsewhere was a show in the 80s, and it ended with the reveal that the whole thing took place in one of this kid's head, right? It was like the whole show was made up, and it was in this kid's head, and the ending was like, oh, this kid's actually like I don't know if they said he was autistic or something like that, but everything was just in his head. But the problem was is that show crossed over with other shows. It crossed over with Cheers. It crossed over with another show.
It? Yeah.
And it basically, and then once you start like tracing the breadcrumbs, you basically get it to like 90% of television produced from the 60s all the way up to to present day. And I'm sure Star Trek was in there somehow at some point. But I remember that you get obviously Buffy to Angel's obvious, and then Angel connected to the Alien verse, and then I think Alien verse.
And then Alien connects to something, and that connects back to this other thing.
Aye. So it's all in his head. It's all in this one kid's head.
Hell of a kid.
Yeah. So how he became a Ferengi, in this continuity, I don't know, but
just why are we having this conversation anymore?
Because it upsets you. It delights me. But yes. So liked all their stuff. There's a bit of a crisis towards the end of the episode where the one alien dude who wants to leave, and he's like, no, let me leave, damn it, tries to like fire away from the station when the docking clamps are on, and they say, look, we can't let you go, like you have to stay. But then because he keeps firing his impulse engines, he actually damages his ship, and his ship's going to blow up, and it's like, shit, well, let's release him and then pull him back in with a tractor beam, but what he's done is like damage the clamps and they won't open. So they're on this sort of ticking clock. This is kind of what Odo's trying to deal with at the end, where he's trying to get down there to save this alien dude before the ship blows up. So they have to try and blow the docking clamps so they can fire it off into space, so it can blow up, safely away from everyone. You've got all this. You've got the ticking time clock of all the characters who've been sick for a while. Brian's like in a fever. I don't know if they ever actually say anyone's dead yet, or if it's just sort of like.
I don't think so, because I think O'Brien was the first to go, so I assume he'd have been the first to die. It's kind of it seems to be the rules they're playing by.
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed his first, the first 10 minutes, which were very O'Brien focused.
Him being frustrated that it's just constantly shit for him to fix, and like there's no chance for him to have a break. And as soon as he's done one thing, Cisco's like, "Oh yeah, sort this out."
It's it plays into what they said in the first episode, because he said right at the start of the pilot that everything's broken. Like, this is a shithole. Like, I have to fix everything. So the idea that we're still only 4 episodes in, and like this replicator's down. Oh, the communications thing over here is down. Oh, this is down over here. He even snaps a little bit at Cisco at one point. Although I suspect that he's already feeling the virus a little bit by the time he does that, and he's a bit tempered, shall we say?
Maybe, but I don't think so, because Cisco is the one that points him towards the replicators. That's what he goes to fix for Cisco, and that's the scene where I assume he catches the virus.
Did he snap?
He gets the coffee out of it, and he snaps before that.
Oh, okay, fair enough. I just misremembered the order of that then. Yeah,
I think so, because it's as he's fixing stuff on the main deck, and then Cisco mentions his coffee tastes like shit or something.
He definitely looked feverish though before the symptoms of the speech started though, because Kira looked up at him and said, "Oh, you look like hell," and he was sort of, he looks like he's got like a fever or something. The way he's sort of slouched over and sweating. But yeah, I generally enjoyed him like going in, and then he goes to like Daxy's lab, and there's just something's making a noise, and he fixes it, but then the lights go out as soon as he fixes it. And he's like, "Is there anything else?" It's like, well, some lights would be lovely, I suppose, if you're really asking.
Yeah, it's just one thing after another.
Yeah.
He could do with some assistants, couldn't he?
He could do with a staff, yeah, like an engineering staff, to help him out, and that's something he might get over time, or maybe it's going to be a running thing that this station's kind of under budgeted, maybe, and that's part of the charm.
Yes, charm.
Well, charm for us, I'm not for them.
Yeah. The staff will not see it that way.
I mean, charm for us in terms of like an atmosphere, like everyone's high strung, everyone's like overworked, but it kind of makes them closer because they're going through the trenches.
They're all in it together.
Yeah. So no, it's good stuff. There's some stuff with Dax, like just commenting that she forgot what it was like to be in a woman's body again. As they're getting stared at going down the hallway, adjusting
still, which
again
is the sort of thing you can only really do at the start of the show. It gets to a point where this becomes normal again for.
Oh, for sure. I think it's clear that here. I think for the first like 10 episodes or so, I think they get away with just reminding the audience of like what things are on the show, and that's just one little reminder for this character. And there's several furthers. Like there was no reminders this episode of like Odo's powers, but I'm sure they'll come every other episode for a while, just so that we're all remembering it and like, okay, he can
and again,
shapeshift.
This comes from a time period where there was no guarantee that everyone was watching every episode.
Yes,
you couldn't guarantee that everyone had seen the first 3. They might have heard from their friends that, oh, hey, this is worth watching, so they jump in now, and you kind of got to be early on, for the first half a season or a season, kind of just constantly throwing all the core elements in just in case people are hopping on.
Yeah, Jake gets the virus at one point, which kind of raises the stakes a little bit for Cisco, makes it a bit more personal. I wouldn't say it adds too much to the episode, but it's a natural thing for them to do. What I would say, probably the thing I like the most about the plot is sort of towards the end, I had this realization that, well, if they don't like communicate to someone what's happening soon, so someone else can figure out and like potentially get an antidote, they are genuinely just screwed, because if Kira doesn't leave in the shuttle and goes and gets this doctor in the nick of time, like it starts affecting her not long after she gets back, so they wouldn't be able to tell anyone what's happening to them. If someone came to the station, first of all, they'd get it soon themselves, but they would be like just confused, like, what's happening? Why is everyone talking like this? What's going on? Assuming they're even still alive, they may all be dead by that point by the time someone shows up. So that kind of give this genuine like, oh, like this was really the last possible like chance to go get someone that could come and help, and she tracks down this guy who, in theory, helped develop it. It turns out he was just kind of there for it, because he was like,
he was kind of vaguely aware.
Yeah, he was like the new guy in the Resistance at the time when it was being developed, but he is able to figure out based on what Bashir did before he started. I thought they were going to get a loophole here. Because I said like they write things down and it still doesn't make any sense. I thought the computer still might understand them as like a little twist.
No, it definitely doesn't.
No, it doesn't. No, it's just like does not comply. Repeat the
computer's
command.
Just like, yeah. Try again. just what the hell are you saying?
Yeah. So yeah. I mean, they have a bit of leeway here because they say that the incubation period varies from person to person based on whatever. So it's just kind of a license to like, okay, we can keep whatever characters we want to be okay until a certain point. But they all get a moment where they start doing it, where they just start speaking gibberish. I think what was funny for me is I noticed that it's actually hard to notice a lot of the words they're saying because when they're not in an order that makes any sense. Because I think sometimes you don't necessarily hear clearly every single word in a sentence, but you hear enough of it that the other words just make sense because it's a sentence.
It's the same as when you're reading. You don't look at every letter in a word, you look at the shape of it, and the start and the end, the first and last letter of the word, you look at the shape and your brain goes, yeah, I'm pretty sure I know what that word is, and just rolls through it.
Yeah, because the first thing O'Brien said, I actually wasn't sure if he'd said a real word instead of what he was supposed to say, or if he'd said something that was gibberish. I think he said something like fishing instead of whatever he was supposed to say. But because it was in the middle of a sentence that made no sense, I went away. What did he just say? What was that?
Yeah.
And
then
I
think that's the reaction of the character as well, because he repeats himself and he gets it right that time. That time,
the first time, yeah.
Because I think it's Cisco. Cisco's like, "What did you say?" And
because he's talking about Jake. He's saying that Keiko's fond of him, and I think he says something like, "Yeah, Keiko fishing them already," or something like that.
Yeah, and Cisco's like, "What?" And he says it again, but properly this time. It's just like, "Huh, okay, I guess I just misheard you."
He's like, "Oh, good then." Yeah, because it's not like he's offended. It's not like he's worried that he said something bad. It was just like, "What was that?"
Yeah. He's like, "Did I hear that right?"
Explain yourself, O'Brien. Yeah. And it ends with, and actually the episode ends with like a joke moment where the replicator's not working again, and Cisco's like, "O'Brien, my coffee's not
back to work."
Yeah, I love how our commanding officer always gets black coffee this time instead of the Earl Grey tea, which was the joke on Next Gen for Picard. Yeah. So we've got a different drink. I can only hope that when we get to Voyager, Janeway likes like hot chocolate or something. Just so it's a different thing again.
Oh, she's slamming back the gin.
That's what we need. We need the first Star Trek show with an alcoholic captain. One moment I did think it's worth pointing out, because again it's a very non-Next Gen thing to do, but it's okay because we're not Next Gen here. This is other characters doing things that aren't, and it's not even a Federation character. Kira just beams the Doctor aboard and is like, "Well, you're going to have to help us now because you've probably got it from me." That is like Picard would never approve of this tact. This is like just putting him in danger.
Oh yeah, but hey, she's definitely not Picard.
Oh, absolutely. But this sets up that there's if not all the characters, certainly a lot of the characters in this show are willing to do things that characters on the Enterprise would never do. And even Cisco does seem like he's willing to do ballsier things than Picard would. But I'm sure he wouldn't go as far as maybe say what Kira would do, being not even part of the Federation, and so
yeah,
it's an interesting, like, good character beat to establish that. So
obviously we know, just broadly speaking, there's some very heavy war themes later in the show, right? It'll be really interesting to see just how far Cisco is willing to go and things like that. We know we get the sense now he's willing to push the boundaries maybe a little more than Picard would. But just what will he do? I'm kind of looking forward to seeing that sort of stuff.
Yeah. I'd arguably say it's even the point of the show is like this is a corner of the Federation that has to deal with darker stuff and therefore has to take tougher challenges, ask tougher questions, come up with solutions for things that aren't as neat and clean, and that could be interesting. So yeah, I would say I liked the episode. I mean, I agree. Like, it didn't have the puzzle element of like how do we deal with the language barrier, which I assumed it would, but
I think I still like all the character beats and stuff like that. I just think it took its most unique point and just kind of forgot about it and just became a generic virus for all intents and purposes.
No, I mean, I can't argue with that.
That was a little disappointing. Yeah. So I think it could have been better than it was, even though it was still pretty good.
Yeah, I can't argue with that, because I mean, it does. You could just swap it out for a virus. It's just a general flu that leads to being in a sick bed kind of thing, and that would be the same. It'd be the same thing, other than just the first couple of moments of like, what did you just say? Which are entertaining on their own little way, but that's basically it. Yeah. You almost wonder, like, what would they get? Maybe like they could draw pictures and that would still work. Like they'd still be able to, like, so then they're basically playing
because it's a visual communication. Maybe, yeah.
So they're doing Pictionary instead to try and figure out what they're saying to each other.
Charades.
The problem is they're on a station where all the devices are probably just all rectangles. So it's like rectangle, computer console, triquar. I don't know what the scale is here, buddy. Come on.
Yeah, give me more to go on. To draw it next to a person just to show the size of it.
And he can't cheat and like write a label on it, because he would just write like breakfast on it. Or possibly couch.
Horses.
Yes. Now we're just giving examples of random words. We know words.
We are at this point.
How many do we know? Probably a couple thousand at least, I imagine.
I'd like to think so, but
I've never counted. But
the reality is probably not enough.
No, not as many as Stephen Fry, I guess. That's my guess. That's what that.
I'd have gone with Susie Dent.
Well, I feel like more of our audience will know who Stephen Fry is, even though he is a British celebrity, as opposed to Susie Dent, because I don't think Countdown, the game show, the tea time game show, has made it across the pond.
I will admit she is more obscure, but everyone should follow her on Twitter for her word of the day being usually very topical, obscure, and hilarious.
I'm just imagining like an American remake of Countdown now, where when they actually go to the countdown and the big clock's going, ticking down. As
they definitely don't win a teapot.
They're trying to get their words or whatever. I'm just imagining the sound effect being a little bit also like a ticking bomb, like, and there'll be an explosion at the end.
Yeah. What's the American prize equivalent? Because you can't give them the countdown teapot.
Well, let's think of a similar coffee maker. There you go.
Maybe
that's the equivalent, surely. No.
Functionally, yes, but culturally, no.
Culturally.
Yeah. Yeah, culturally. Like a teapot has, in quotation, the point, it's this thing. Okay, you're using this to make, the tea for the the family. Like that. The coffee pot tends to not be used in that way, like in the same context.
I don't know if they have an equivalent then.
No, they don't. Which is why I'm saying like countdown wouldn't translate because of that and nothing else.
Oh, that's why countdown wouldn't translate, because they don't have an equivalent of the teapot that they can give as a prize.
Yeah, that's the one reason.
I love the idea some Americans are hearing this and they've never heard of Countdown, and they're thinking, what shit game show only has a teapot as a prize?
The best kind of game show.
Now, regular Countdown's boring. Countdown with 8 out of 10 cats. Now, that's funny. But
I happen to agree. But yeah.
Yes. Anyway, that's what Star Trek Deep Space
Nine. At no point in that did we explain what the game of Countdown actually is.
Countdown's just a language.
No, just leave it. They can look it up. It's funnier.
Okay, fine. There was at least a segment where there's a clock ticking down for them to get an answer to something. That's all they know. Yeah. All right. There you go. That's Star Trek Deep Space Nine. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it.
You're not going to tell us what's coming next time.
There's a couple of tangents there. Apologies. I am going to do that. Shut your face. So next time we have Captive Pursuit is the name of the episode. I'm imagining like it's like someone's modded Trivial Pursuit into like a more aggressive game. You have to capture the other players of the wedgies.
I feel like you've got like games on the brain right now because of Countdown.
That's your fault. So yeah, Captive Pursuit. Here's the description. For the first time, an alien comes from the other side of the wormhole. Oh, okay. He has ship trouble and seems very reluctant to accept any help. Chief O'Brien quickly finds out he has a secret. I assume the alien has a secret, not that Chief O'Brien himself has a secret.
I mean, Chief O'Brien might have many secrets, but in the context of this sentence, yes, I think the alien.
Yes. So, very good. That sounds reasonable enough. I'm curious to see what the alien's like. And, does the Universal Translator do a good job with it? Is there a language barrier in this episode? Maybe I shouldn't hope for that because they already didn't do it in this episode, but...
I would suspect not. I would suspect it's more just a case of, oh, who's over there? As opposed to them being like a completely weird culture or anything like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. So we shall see some funky looking suits in this next episode. I assume from the alien ship, but we shall see. But yeah, that's what's coming up next time. So let us know what you thought of this one in the comments below. Like, subscribe, ding the bell for notifications, all that stuff. You can, of course, support the show by hitting the super thanks button below the video, or you can go over to patreon.com/MailFuzzTV and support us for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses for your troubles. So go and have a look and see if you're interested. One of the perks of the $5 tier is to get the classic reviews of Star Trek and Babylon 5 and stuff a week early. So go and have a look, see if you're interested, and see if you want to do that. But that is it. So thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching Star Trek, and maybe this episode, Odo should have went into a bowl with some alphabet spaghetti and tried to help them out a little bit with some basic language and stuff.